When people think about the fall of Rome, they imagine barbarians at the gates, collapsing legions, or emperors poisoned in palace halls. But empires don't fall only from external attacks. They rot from within, and the most corrosive force is always money. Rome didn't collapse merely because of invasions or corruption. It collapsed because its currency collapsed. And the lesson from that fall still applies to every modern economy that thinks it can manipulate money and get away with it. For centuries, the backbone of the Roman economy was the silver denarius. First minted around 211 BC, the denarius was nearly pure silver and trusted across the entire empire. Roman soldiers were paid with it, merchants demanded it, and the people stored their wealth in it. The denarius wasn't just money, it was trust in metal form. The empire's power and the value of its currency were inseparably linked. But running an empire is expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts built, wars financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was stretched to its limits. Tax revenues could no longer meet expenses. So emperors turned to an old trick, debasement, reducing the silver content of the coin. The numbers tell the story. Under Augustus, the denarius contained about 95% silver. Under Caracalla, roughly 50%. Under Gallienus, below 5%. A coin once made of solid metal had become a bronze disc coated with a thin silver wash. People noticed. Inflation exploded. A measure of wheat that cost 1 denarius suddenly cost dozens. Merchants stopped accepting debased coins. Local economies reverted to barter. The crisis peaked during the crisis of the 3rd century. Invasions, plague, civil wars, a collapsing monetary system, and emperors being killed one after another for 50 years. Taxes collected in worthless money, farmers abandoning their land, trade networks falling apart, desperate governments imposing price controls and forced labor. None of it worked. Diocletian tried to stop the bleeding with the edict on maximum prices in 301 AD. Violators faced death. But the edict failed immediately. You cannot fix broken money by threatening people. The black market exploded. Official trade collapsed. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius. Constantine introduced the solidus, a stable gold coin that would last centuries. But for the Western Empire, it was too late. The collapse of the currency had hollowed Rome out from the inside. Armies could no longer be paid. Trade died. Trust evaporated. Rome's fall was a long unraveling, and at its center was money. The lesson for today: the destruction of money is the destruction of empires. Rome thought it could hide debasement behind coins that looked the same. Modern governments hide inflation behind printed paper and manipulated interest rates. The outcome is always the same. The people pay. History repeated in Germany, 1920s hyperinflation, wheelbarrows of cash, savings wiped out. It repeated in Zimbabwe, 2000s prices doubling daily, a currency abandoned entirely. Even modern economies repeat Rome's pattern. In 1971, Nixon severed the dollar's link to gold, turning it into a pure fiat currency. Debt exploded. Purchasing power sank. The money looks the same, but the value has been hollowed out. Governments disguise inflation as growth. They celebrate rising wages even as costs rise faster. They present debt as investment. They point to rising stock markets as proof of prosperity, even though most people own little or no stock. It's the same trick Roman emperors used, pretending nothing has changed while silently extracting value. Today the scale is global. Rome collapsed regionally. Weimar collapsed nationally. Zimbabwe collapsed locally. But today, every major currency is fiat. Every country is indebted. And every central bank can print at will. The next collapse will be global. So, what should an individual learn from this? Inflation is not an accident. It is a policy. Real wealth is not in paper, but in assets that preserve value. Never assume stability is permanent. Romans, Germans, Zimbabweans all learned this too late. When money dies, societies unravel, contracts fail, trade collapses, armies disband, governments lose legitimacy. The barbarians may finish the job, but the killing blow always comes from the treasury. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it punishes ignorance ruthlessly. Rome's monetary crisis wasn't just about bad rulers. It was about the fragility of money when abused by power. And that fragility still shapes our world today. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History holds all the answers, and I'll show you where to find them.